Hi, my name is Katie Gieske, and I am actually doing this project alone, just because my schedule is so crazy. I don't know if I would be able to coordinate with anyone else, but maybe next time. But first off, these two clips were very different, mostly because one was a press conference and one was just a more planned speech. So there's that to take into account too. But first, when I did my analysis, of course, Trump, you had to split it up into different sentences. There were a lot of sentences that kind of didn't work as sentences, but were still there. And so when I actually took a look at that, and then the governor's speech is right there, I found that the governor had about 50% of his sentences were very complex. He didn't have any utterances that were not a sentence, whereas Trump had a few that weren't sentences, and as far as his sentences went, he only had 2 out of 10 that were actually complex, so 20%. When you start looking at the mean length of utterance or sentences, the governor had a lot of utterances. His sentences were very long and very complex normally. He had a few simple sentences. As you can see, 50% were complex. So 11.2% of his, or the mean length was 11.2. I shouldn't even put the percent there. And so comparatively to Trump's mean length of utterance, it was about 8.9. So they were pretty close, but a little bit different. Then you got into the actual words that you were trying to figure out. It was similar on the nouns, actually. They used about the same amount of nouns. Verbs were about the same. Everything was very similar with the exception of a few things. So that was interesting, given that the utterances, the mean length utterance was different for both of them. So I found that kind of cool, I guess you could say, or interesting. But they both had about the same semantic categories as each other. So when I actually went in and graded them on the rubric, I used the whole rubric. I graded them on everything. So out of everything, I could compare that too. But as far as just the semantics and the syntax, organization, and engagement, the governor did very well on all of them. I don't think, even on the full rubric, that he got a point docked off, in my opinion. He was very professional. It was very well written, very well done. Whereas President Trump was a little bit more informal, it seemed like, which, I mean, it was a press conference, so there's that to take into account. But the organization of the press conference and his interrupting nature of the reporters kind of made organization go down a little bit in my mind, because it still could have been more organized even if it was a press conference. But he still did pretty well considering it was a press conference. Engagement, they both engaged pretty well. Trump kind of tried to engage and then stopped, and they started going off on his own tangent. And so there's that too, that he got docked on. So syntax, Trump didn't use a lot of complex sentences. It was a lot of start and stop, and then start and stop, and then go into something else, start and stop. And then his semantics were a little bit better, though. They weren't very descriptive, and he could have used better words and have it been more organized. So he got at least 1 point off in every category, just for those reasons. It just wasn't a great representation of a speech, even though, like I said, he was just answering questions, but there could have been different ways to approach it. So then we get into the big differences, and as far as perception goes, I think Trump took a really roundabout way to say that both sides could be to blame. And so, yes, maybe they could be, but that's his interpretation. He didn't want to jump to conclusions. They might have, this might have. The governor just put one side on the spot. He's like, this is what happened. This is what I think happened. This is how bad I think it is. And so they both had a little bit of a different interpretation of the situation, which can skew the perception of who's listening to either of them. Then when they got into the multicultural category, the governor addressed how important the diversity in this country is. And I think that the diversity is very important as well. And he said it very well. But Trump didn't address it as much. He kind of did, but it wasn't super reassuring to any multicultural groups that they were super safe. And so then their nonverbal communication was very different. Trump was a little bit more informal and unprofessional than the governor was. The governor was very professional, had the pauses in the right spot, emphasized the right things. And I enjoyed listening to that. And so then to conclude this, I just think comparatively there could have been different ways to address each situation. The governor did a very good job. Trump could have used different words to make his point more well taken. So that's kind of my overview. It was interesting to look at both of them though and compare. So yeah, thank you.